Hey friends, and welcome to episode 9 of the Plant Based Diet Benefits Podcast. This is your host, Trent Lindsay, a Mastering Raw Food Nutrition educator and a student of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where I am training to become a health coach to help serve you all. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm super excited about our host, Plant Based Gabriel. We get to listen to a fascinating story, not only of his own transformation of switching from a meat-eating diet of a former college football player and how he broke his back, to then switching into a plant-based diet and losing over 100 pounds. But he also shares some very motivating stories of how he's been able to impact the lives of those closest to him as well. It is a absolutely fantastic podcast, and I hope that you guys stick around to listen to the whole show. He is a great speaker, and I learned a lot, and everybody, I think, will get a lot of motivation from him. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start the show. All right. Hey, friends. Welcome to episode 9 of the Plant Based Diet Benefits Podcast. I have Plant Based Gabriel with me today. I'm super excited to be chatting with him. I have some in-laws who are from Nebraska, and Gabriel, I'm sure he'll mention that he was a football player for Nebraska. So I think I might have to spread this podcast with my friends back, or my family back in Nebraska, see if they recognize Gabriel from his playing days. But before I get too much into my excitement about that, let me just welcome Gabriel to the show. Thank you, sir, for joining me today.
Hey, well, thank you for having me on, Trent.
All right, so I mentioned a little bit right there about you playing for Nebraska, but if you don't mind me asking, just if you can give me a little bit more about yourself and what you do today.
Yeah, so I am. I'm currently sitting in my home office, but my wife and I, we live in Richmond, Virginia. We have a 1-acre vegan vegetable farm, market garden style farm, and we try to grow as much of our food as possible. But I also run plantbasedgabriel.com and my YouTube and Facebook and Instagram pages at Plant Based Gabriel. So we just try to educate everybody on the benefits and the wonders that a plant-based diet can do, and showing basically what it's done for myself especially.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I obviously am a fan of spreading the message, and I've been following you on Facebook for a while as well. So I appreciate everything that you do. Even for other people who are vegan, it's always nice to kind of watch what other people do and get some new ideas.
Definitely, I think there's really there's a good need for individuals showing the just the health promoting benefits of this way of living. I love all of my other vegan friends, and the whole community is amazing. But unless we really show the benefits that it can, and I know the benefits for the planet, for the animals, the environment. But if we really aren't focusing also on showing the amazing benefits it has for us, it makes it harder for our friends, family, loved ones, coworkers, people we meet on the street to make that connection, unless it's really applicable or something that they feel like can make a big difference in their life without worrying about the other implications at that certain time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the health benefits is what gets a lot of people started too. So spreading the message on that is good. I didn't, when I decided to go plant-based, it wasn't necessarily for the environment or for the animals. I think that helped me solidify why I eat a plant-based diet later on, but it was all about the health for me. When I first started, I'm sure it was, it may have been for you as well. I know a little bit about your story, so I already kind of knew that, but, so can you talk to me about like your days at Nebraska? Were you vegan the whole time, or can you tell us a little bit more about what your diet was before going plant-based? And
yeah. So back, I was starting long snapper for the University of Nebraska. Coming out of high school, I was the number 2 ranked player coming out of my position, 5-star 5-star athlete, whatever you want to say. I was good at what I did, and came to Nebraska, walked in, started right away, and things were going pretty well. I actually was, classes were interesting. I was studying livestock nutrition at the time, or livestock production. And I was going through classes, playing football. Everything was going pretty well. And then at that time, right, we had what's called the training table, which is pretty common among most major D1 schools now, is where the athletes come together and they eat at lunch and every night, sometimes breakfast, and, eating, a big steak, a couple chicken breasts, eggs, bacon, sausage, every lunch, dinner, and breakfast. So, and that's what I was studying at the time as well. I was studying livestock production. I was studying why we had to produce high quality protein so that we could feed the U.S., so that we could feed the world, so that we could cure the malnutrition that's happening, and that we can build a strong nation, and all the hoopla that goes around the raising and feeding and fattening and slaughtering of animals. And so I was right there with it. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was eating that, probably a pound of animal products a day at a minimum. And so, but I was also a high level athlete, which meant that I wasn't, obese at the time, but I was larger. About 240 pounds was around my playing weight. And played. And then during the off season, I suffered a career-ending back injury. And so I was in the weight room. We were squatting. I stepped back, and just like that, the lights went out, and nobody was home when it came to the nerves in my back. A pain was shot down there. And over the course of the next couple months, they tried about everything that you could think of, the whole spectrum. Hydrotherapy, acupuncture, physical therapy, every avenue that they could take, but eventually they were not able to do much about it, and so I went ahead and had a 6.5-hour back surgery that in hindsight I would have opted for another route. It seemed like we took all the avenues, but we didn't take one avenue, and my doctors didn't say this avenue, and that one avenue would have been, hey, to lose some weight, take some pressure off the back. And that's what I would have done, and that's what I'd recommend others if someone's in that circumstance. If you feel like you've gone through everything, you've tried everything, but you haven't tried the weight loss aspect, I'd give that a go. And so I found myself, after career-ending back injury, I then had this 6.5-hour back surgery, and I've coming from a high-level college athlete, and I'm still eating the same things I was eating, and I ballooned up to about 260 pounds, and that is where I stayed for a good amount of time. Again, gaining weight after a back surgery, not a good thing. And I just began looking for ways to lose weight. I was in an interesting predicament in the fact that a lot of people, and myself included, thought that, hey, once I was done with playing football, I would just start running more. I would just get on the treadmill. I'd begin exercising more. I'd, do all the things that you think that are the ways to lose weight. I could just exercise more. I could just run more. And I found myself in a place where I couldn't do that. I just suffered a back injury. The only thing I could do exercise-wise was walk from my bedroom to the kitchen to the living room, to the kitchen to the living room to the bedroom, to the kitchen to the bathroom to the living room. I was only able to walk for it was something like 20 to 30 steps at a time for a good amount of time. And so then I had to look for different avenues, right? I wasn't going to be able to get on the treadmill or get on the elliptical or, do the stair steppers and lose this weight. It was going to have to come through another means. And so I began looking at my diet, and I began just asking my professors, asking the people I was around on what I should be doing. And I was led to a ketogenic diet, of course, because the people I was talking to were animal science-based individuals. That's where their learning was from. And so I went towards the animal-based diets, the keto, low carb, the JJ Virgin skinny diets, and everything you could think of, other than the one real way to lose weight. But I tried these diets. I would lose maybe a few pounds, but I would find that they were unsustainable. And so after falling off the boat, what seemed like, a discouragement, I would then, start eating more of the plant, more starchy foods, and then still eating the fat and the animals. And as I'd gained back more weight than I ever lost. And so I kind of was in this cycle that I know many Americans and people throughout the world find themselves in. And I then began to I just kept questioning, saying, well, there's gotta be a way. I can't just keep gaining weight and have my back hurt and keep gaining weight and not be able to exercise. And so that led me to an enlightenment when I was sitting in my animal nutrition class, and I look over to the girl a good friend that was sitting next to me, and I said, there is something wrong with this picture. She goes, well, what's that, Gabriel? I go, I've been asking this guy, my professor, about nutrition advice, about how I should lose weight, and he keeps giving me advice. And for the first time, I looked up there in the front of that classroom, and I realized that nutrition professor was 300 pounds. And at that point, I decided there had to be something different. I had taken the advice of my animal science professors. I had taken the advice of the animal-based diet proponents. And I realized that I had to do something different. And luckily, around that time, some beneficial things came about. I stumbled upon watching things like Before the Flood and Cowspiracy, and later on What the Health Happened, but just a few documentaries. And I had read a few things and got into the documentaries. And it was interesting watching something like Cowspiracy, where it was based a lot about the environment, but the real thing was happening, and they were talking about water usage and talking about 2,000. It takes somewhere around 2,000 gallons of water to produce. It's 1,500 or 2,000 gallons to produce a quarter pounder of beef, 2,000 gallons to produce a gallon of milk. And I'm watching this with my wife and we are sitting there, and she's like, "That's crazy." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "I learn about that every single day in my classes. I know it takes 2,000 gallons of water to produce a gallon of milk, but in my classes, we talk about how can we get that cow to drink 2,001 gallons of water to produce a little bit more milk so we can make a little bit more money, with total disregard to the environment, to our water reserves, to giant aquifers that we're sucking up." And so that was a bit of an enlightenment. And then I started to get into some of the plant-based doctors, Dr. McDougall, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell. And so that kind of led me to just trying to figure things out. I went quite the roundabout way of getting to there, but I definitely I got on this way of eating. And if you don't know my story, I lost 100 pounds over the course of the next 2 years at about an average of a pound a week, and found that I could do that by cutting out the animal products, the meat, milk, and eggs, and the oil, and do it with eating potatoes, rice, beans, corn, quinoa, and green leafy vegetables and fruit. And so I came full circle in all of that, I guess you could say. But I did finish up my animal science, my livestock production degree. So I do tell people that I do have a 4-year degree in breeding, feeding, fattening, slaughtering, slicing, and serving any animal that Old MacDonald ever dreamed of. And not something that I'm necessarily proud of or ever really going to use again, but something that is a background that I'm able to utilize to somewhere meet people in the middle that may have a farming and ag animal science background, to where they may not be able to want to come sit at the table with the vegan activists, but they can sit down at the table with the old country boy like myself, and we can just have a talk and just talk about some of the health benefits and things that happen with this way of eating.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about just the diversity of people, right? In the U.S., everybody has kind of a different background, and there's going to be some people that really resonate with where you've come from, and we'll be able to understand your story a lot better than others, right? just even before we started recording the podcast today, right? Like I mentioned, our jobs or what we do every day is completely different. Like I sit at my desk all day for my job, and you're out working hard on the farm. And I totally wish if I was doing what you did, but I don't have an acre of land or anything like that either. So, but I know, I'd definitely be a lot more fit.
You'll have an open invite, Trent, whenever you want to come down to Richmond. You can get some of that labor out, and if you want to.
Well, at least maybe get a tour of the farm and learn a couple of things.
Definitely.
Yeah, one of my the home base, I guess I can call it for my work is out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, not too far away.
Yeah, so you never know. I might make a extra weekend trip.
Awesome.
So if you don't mind, like, what was that transition like to go plant-based? Like when you decided to do it, you said you were watching some of these, videos with your wife. Like, did both of you guys, I'm assuming she eats a plant-based diet as well?
She does. Yeah. So getting started, I had come from the months before. I was doing a ketogenic diet. I was doing low carb. I was doing the this, that, and the other diet, the left shoe, right foot, this big diet, all the different your type diets. And I was trying all these different things. And so when I said, talked to my wife about it, I said, hey, I'm going to give this vegan thing a try. She said, that's good. She said, but you're not going to stick with it. And I'm not going to change as you do it. She's like, I just, because I'd asked her, to do 3 or 4 different things with me the previous months that I didn't stick with. And so, for one reason, because they were unsustainable and they made us both feel like crap, and it didn't help me lose weight. So I didn't force that on her. And so my wife's background, she comes from her parents were pig farmers, and my wife comes from a rural background. She's currently a mathematics professor, but she does come from a rural background. And so she did not start it with me. She did agree as I got going with it. It's always an interesting transition because a lot of people, and I don't eat currently, right? I eat a whole food, plant-based, oil-free diet. But back then, before I even started eating vegan, could care less what I ate. We had very good friends. We have very good friends out in Nebraska, and we would go to their house every Sunday night for dinner. And the wife would make a dessert for dinner, and she'd make 2 desserts. She'd make one for the 7 people that were going to be eating dinner, and then one for Gabriel, because I would eat a whole dessert. I would eat a whole pie. I'd eat a whole cake. I would, and that's before eating, the 3 plates of the main meal. And so I had no problem eating terribly and eating horrible foods. And so when I first went to the vegan route, right, I didn't initially jump on to the Dr. McDougall's, Dr. Esselstyn's, Dr. Kahn's. I did pretty quickly, but that first step was really just saying, hey, I'm going to cut the meat, milk, eggs, and dairy, and I'm going to start eating, just start eating some more fruits and vegetables, and just see how that goes. And I started to feel better, and my wife started to eat the similar things, and we decided that at the start that I was eating completely vegan, but she said, hey, I'll eat we'll eat vegan in the house, but if we're going to go out, then I'll have a steak or I'll have some chicken. And I said, that's completely fine, baby. I'm asking you to make a big change, and whatever you want to do. And so she did that, and things were going along, and about 3 or 4 months into that, she got a call from her mother, who came down, who just said that she came back from the doctor and that she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And around, the previous couple months, I had been reading all the plant-based books that I could get my hands on, and we'd watched all the documentaries. And so I knew, and my wife knew the direct links that are between dairy and breast cancer. And so at that point, she kind of sat down. She's like, you know what? It would be irresponsible of me to continue eating meat, milk, and eggs knowing what I know now and knowing that how predisposed I would be already after that call. And so she made that switch and has never looked back. It's been almost 3 years. Well, it's been about 3 years for me. And so I think that would be about 2.5 years for my wife. And so she started to do this, and she's been going strong ever since. And then shortly after, so a few months after, my mother-in-law got diagnosed with the breast cancer. We just sent a few things. There was no preaching or anything. It was just saying, hey, you might want to look into this. Again, they were pig farmers at the time, and said, hey, you might want to just look into this. Just watch these videos, or just check them out. Sending them the forks over knives, and sending them just some Dr. McDougall talks, and she decided to give it a try. And so, a long story short, as she went through the standard care, she decided that the real big impetus was that her doctors were saying that she was going to have to take a chemo pill for the rest of her life. And she did not like that as an option, and made the decision that she was going to give this whole food plant-based thing a try. And that's been a year and a half, maybe. Well, no, what is that? Almost 2 years now that that they've been completely plant-based and are now vegetable farmers and not pig farmers.
Yeah, that's great. It's good. It's good transition for them, and they're definitely gonna be healthier because of it. We had Naomi Green. I don't know if you've heard of Naomi Green, but she was on the show, on my show just a few weeks back, and she also was diagnosed with breast cancer. And after going through all the transition, or all the typical treatments, she was told she was going to have to take a pill, for the rest of her life too. Mm-hmm. And she just wasn't having it. And she's like, that's not what's in the cards for me. And has been plant-based since.
Awesome.
All right. So, I think it's one of the interesting parts about, going plant-based is always like, how do you get perceived from a family? So I appreciate you sharing that. My wife and I did it together. You guys did it separately, but obviously, the support was still there, which is great. I think it's always, you need that support in order to stick with it. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you didn't eat necessarily the same way when you first started, compared to what you eat now. And I know it sounds like you eat very much like a whole foods plant-based diet now. But at the beginning, did you have a lot of like the fake meats and stuff like that in your diet, to try to make going plant-based a little bit easier? Or starting out, it was coming from more so the thought process that if it's vegan, it's got to be healthy. And so instead of having ground beef on a pizza, we would have vegan crumbles on a pizza with vegan cheese. And then we would have tortilla chips and hummus. I would eat my weight in those probably once a week. And so it was going for the vegan foods in the belief that they're healthier, which in a certain point of view they probably are, but you're not nearly reaching that health pinnacle, or even getting close to where you could be health wise by eating a lot of those meat analogs. And that's not to say that people who are on this way of eating, that eat a whole food plant-based diet, can't or shouldn't go out to a nice vegan restaurant once a month and have a fun celebratory meal. But definitely not to the point where you should be going out and or to where we go out and eat an unhealthy oil-filled vegan meal once a week or a couple times a week, where I think a lot of people get stuck in a rut there where they think, and I think that does a lot of harm to the movement as well, as where a lot of individuals will think that, hey, I've watched the Cowspiracy or What the Health, I'm going vegan, and they go vegan and then they either don't lose weight or they gain weight because they've cut out the animal products and added in the vegan analogs of those products, and eat those thinking that they're healthy. And so I think there's a big discrepancy between
and some people will say, oh, there's no such thing as a vegan diet. Veganism is about the animals, and you can say that. That's great, but I think that the healthier you can be and look and act as a vegan, the better it is for the animals, because more people are going to want to be around you and jump on the bandwagon of what you are doing. And so that's my take on that. And I go around speaking, and I give a talk about the things that I think can make a vegan world, and or at least a vegan world around you, because I've been very, very good. I don't know too many other people that have been able to make as big of an impact on their direct family and friends. That's something I'm really proud of, because in this whole journey and starting my blog and starting the Facebook and YouTube pages and helping thousands of people, my number one goal getting started was, hey, in the end, it doesn't matter to me if I help 1,000 people, that's great. But if I can't make a direct impact and help the people that I love, that I care about, that I talk to on a daily basis, if I can't make a direct impact with them and help them save their health, then everything else has been great, but I'll still have a huge void. And so that was number one. That was the biggest thing for me, was being able to help my mom, dad, sister, my grandparents, my cousins, help our family and friends, help my mother and father-in-law, and make sure that those people that I'm around, that I have the biggest amount of impact on, can make the best decisions for their health. And so that really led to the idea of leading by example and loving. I think those are the two biggest things. I think that if we have people in our lives, or someone that we really want or know that this way of eating can help, right? I think you don't have to close your eyes and think for too long to have an image of someone who's overweight, sick, in and out of hospitals within a very close circle between your family and friends. And so for those individuals, I think the best way that we can really make a difference is, one, by leading by example. Because if we say that this vegan diet's great, you're going to feel better. But if they've seen us be a vegan for 2 years and all we've done is gain weight, get pimples, and had just as much problems in and out of the doctor as they have, well, then that whole vegan thing doesn't seem all that great. But if they see us in the past 2 years lose weight, get trim, begin to be able to exercise, stay away from hospitals, and really regain our health, then that's where we become a much more of an agent for change in those people around us. And then just the loving thing, because you could turn from the Biggest Loser to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's still going to be people that say, I still going to eat my eggs and bacon in the morning, even though I'm 300 pounds and in and out of doctors, and had a triple bypass twice already. There's still going to be those people. But if there's someone that you really care about, your mom, dad, your uncle, your aunt, someone that you really, really care about, you're going to keep loving them. And as long as you really do care about them, then and you're leading by example, the hope is that over time they will jump onto this way. They'll give it a try at least, and whether that's preemptively, like luckily my mom and my sister and my father-in-law have done, or maybe that's after a health scare, like say my mother-in-law or other family members or friends. And so wherever someone's on that spectrum, just for them to at least have someone, and you being that someone, is saying, hey, I'm going to love you, and I'm going to lead this by an example and show you that this way of eating and living is truly beneficial. And so that's my claim to fame on that aspect of things, is that I really do think that number one, I think everybody would love to see a vegan world. I think we'd love to see the impact on the environment, on the animals, on our health. But we really have to make a vegan world around us with those people that we can directly impact. And I do think there is a good way to go about that. And I think if everybody can make that little difference, then that's where we make a big change societally and globally. But it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why you really got to love those people that you're trying to help make this beneficial change, because it can be frustrating and it can be it can be a long process. But whether it takes 5 days, 5 months, 5 years, 5 decades, you can be that person that's been there, that's willing to help educate and help make a change in their lives.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, that's, the people that are nearest to us are obviously the most important people in our little worlds, right? So being able to influence them like you've been able to do is awesome and great to hear. I obviously I have people in my life that I'd love to see get healthier, and some of my family members have maybe not switched to a plant-based diet, but have incorporated more plants into their diet. Mm-hmm. And gotten healthier, like my parents, for example. And it's great. I even lived with them for a little bit of time, so it was great to see what they eat on a daily basis and how it's changed from like what they ate when I lived with them as a kid, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great to hear. And if you don't mind me kind of sticking on that point for just a little bit, has there been anybody in your life where you've kind of had to, I don't want to say like be more forceful with them, but like have a blunt conversation with them?
Yeah, I think the only way to make that change long term is to lead by example and to really care about those people and love them, whether that's your mom, dad, sister, aunt, uncle, friend, relative. I think those two things are key. But there are people that may be really, really close to you that you have to go a little bit, take the extra step for, but you can't yell at them. You can't, it'd be great if I could just, and I think there's some people in the community that think you can yell at people to make a change, to make them change the way they eat or see the world around them. And unfortunately, at least personally, I don't respond well to that. And most of the people I know don't respond well to that. And so you can't just, there's got to be that background that they know that you really do care about them and that they have seen a change in your life. And whether that's a 100-pound difference or a 10-pound difference, or maybe you've just been able to get off your blood pressure medication. There's a huge scale as to change. Change doesn't have to be this huge drastic thing, because to them, maybe their blood pressure medication makes them feel so horrible that seeing you get off of it was the impetus. And maybe someone who lost 100 pounds that they can't even relate to doesn't equate with them. And so for me, yeah, there is someone that would be my dad. So my dad is someone he played college football. He was a very good college football player, but had some injuries like myself, and has had a lifelong amount of repercussions from them. He's had multiple total knees done on both legs. He's had reconstructed shoulders on both shoulders, and I just had a lot of problems with that, and to the point where he has had some infections in his knees, and he's been in and out of the hospitals with that. But he's also someone who, up until a year ago, ate like he did when he was in college. So for 40 years, he ate beef and bean and cheese and sour cream burrito every day for lunch, and would have a lunch meat sandwich for dinner, and would just ate like an unhealthy college student, we can say. And so he weighed anywhere from 250 to 310 pounds growing up, and up until a year ago. But he last 2 Christmases ago now it would be, I got a call from my mom, who this was probably December, right starting that 3rd week of December. And I get a call saying that Dad has another infection in his knee. He had an infection about 3 or 4 years previous to that, and the doctors thought they had taken care of it. But the last time he had the infection, the doctor said if it ever did get infected again, that they would have to go ahead and take care, or go in and amputate the leg. And so he, after hearing that, they were worried about that. They went into the doctor. And the doctors pretty much gave him the same thing, said, we might give it a shot, but, we might be able to see if we can give you some antibiotics, but it's looking like we're going to have to amputate your leg. And so you can imagine around Christmas time getting that call. At the time, my wife was still studying or getting her PhD at Nebraska. I was working full time. And so we had, getting that call was definitely an interesting thing to receive. We sat down, my wife and I, and decided that, I would quit my job, step down from work, and I was going to move home, step away from my wife for a time, and go help take care of mom and dad, because at the time my mom was working full time and they were going to really need someone to be there pretty much around the clock, making sure that my dad was able to get to the hospital for his checkups, and pretty much they needed a team around them to fight to keep his leg. And so I said I would, with one condition, and that one condition was that I was going to cook a whole food plant-based breakfast, a whole food plant-based dinner, and a whole food plant-based lunch. And I guess the second condition would be that they were going to have to eat that. And while I was home, they were going to eat anything and everything that I made and nothing else. And they, my dad said, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to lose my leg if I don't do anything. And so he was on board. And my mom, of course, said, hey, this is great. I don't have to cook. And so we made the decision to come home. And over the course of the next 5 months, my dad had a high level of antibiotics, going through a PICC line in, but he also was eating a whole food plant-based diet, a very drastic change from what he had eaten for the past 55 years. And so he ended up losing 50 pounds over that time. And I will say this, so to fight this infection, they actually had to take his knee out, his replacement knee out of his knee, put a spacer in for the time being, sew him back up, and he was in a wheelchair for those 5-6 months, 4 to 5 months. And so was able to lose 50 pounds and never went to bed hungry. He ate as much, rice, beans, corn, quinoa, fruit and vegetables that he wanted. And he was able to, over that course of time, was able to fight the infection, and he's walking around and doing great now. But he also, was able to do that with some simple changes, or I was able to help him do that with some simple changes, right? It wasn't saying, hey, you're used to eating a lunch meat sandwich every day and a ground beef and cheese and sour cream burrito every day. Let's start eating, salads, and let's have kale smoothies. No, it was saying, hey, I'll fix you a burrito for lunch, but we're going to have fat-free refried beans. We're going to have corn and rice in there, and we're going to top it with lettuce and salsa instead of sour cream and cheese. And I'll put some seasonings in there, and we're going to give that a try. And he loved it. And then we said, all right, well, we're not going to do this lunch meat sandwich thing for dinner. How about we go ahead and give some bean burgers a try? So I made him bean burgers, and he loved the bean burgers. And so he was, hooked on those. And so it was making some, what may seem drastic changes to some people, but in my mind would seem very simple and easy changes compared to relearning to live in a wheelchair with sans one leg. So I was able to help him do that, but it was, and they're doing great. Mom and dad both eat a whole food plant-based diet now. My sister does as well. My sister's the Midwest Vegan Queen on Facebook and Instagram. So my dad was definitely someone who, but it was a sacrifice. It wasn't saying, getting on the phone and yelling at him saying, if you want to change this, you want to save your leg, you're going to have to do this. It was a sacrifice on my end, which again was leading by example and showing how much I did love and care about him. But that's applicable for, a lot of people. I have a cousin right now who eats a vegan diet that actually stepped down from work and is helping a grandparent out right now in a different circumstance, but a similar setting. And so seeing that happen again in my close circle is amazing. And knowing that someone, when you see someone do a change like that, make a change, a huge change like that, because they really care about someone, yes, they make a difference in the person's life that they're sacrificing for. They make a big difference. It's a huge difference. But what they might not be able to see at the time, and what I see, being a few steps back on this side of things, is the dozens and dozens of people the lives that she's changing, the lives that I've been able to change now from making that one choice of saying, hey, I'm going to I'm going to step down. I'm going to go take care of him. I'm going to be the person that makes this difference. And so it's amazing to see that happen and evolve over a few other people now. But yeah, there are some people that, you know what, it's crazy to think, but this is a life and death thing for a lot of people. You might think that your fork and spoon and knife aren't what, your biggest killers, but they are. And if you've got someone that you care about so much so that that what they're doing is going to lead them to either a premature death, or they're going to be in and out of hospitals, hooked up to machines the last 3 decades of their life, and you feel like you really can make a change and an impact in them, then there's really no sacrifice too great to make that change. And so being able to see that happen over and over again has been really encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an incredible story of you talking about your dad and everything that you did to support him. But he's extremely proud to have you in his life, right, and be able to help him on his journey. That's fantastic.
I hope so. I'm just happy that they've stuck with it, and they've and that's the thing where you say you've really got to love them and you've really got to lead by an example, because it's easy for me to go home, or not easy, but it's easier for me to go and cook some meals and then step away and without setting that firm foundation of why and how this has changed my life. Without that being there, you could receive some health benefits and then see how tasty that big slice of animal is on that plate and want to go after that and totally disregard your health again. So it's been amazing to really see that him and mom both to have stuck with this change, what I would call long-term now, and see a lifetime impact on what that's doing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Again, congratulations. That's great to hear. And I know I'm sure people who are listening to this episode who have family members, that they really want to help. And I may just, motivate them to see if there's a way that they can help out, a little bit more directly, like you were able to do too. So that's great.
Definitely.
So I think we've, talked a lot about the benefits of a plant-based diet just through different stories you've been able to share, which is great. So next, I just want to maybe ask for some advice that you want to give to the listeners. Is there, and maybe in terms of like in the kitchen, like, is there any appliances that you really think can help make going plant-based easier, or maybe outside the kitchen, just going plant-based? What advice do you have for the listeners?
Yeah, there's one bit of advice would be there's no musts. There's not you must drink a kale smoothie in the morning. You must have your matcha latte with whatever superfood in it. There's no musts in there, and because there's tens of thousands of different plant foods out there to choose from. So that's been something really great for myself in knowing that, hey, I don't have to scarf down the salad if I don't want to. If there's something in there that I don't enjoy, I can add something different. And so I would say you to experiment with the different plant foods, but the basics of it are really simple. Is to one, if you want to reach your maximum potential health-wise, is to cut out the meat, milk, and eggs and the oil. Now, the meat, milk, and eggs is easy for a lot of people. The oil can be tough. It was tough for my mom. It was very tough for my mom. But you really don't see those benefits. You'll see benefits, but you won't see the drastic benefits that you see from cutting out not only the meat, milk, and eggs, but also cutting out the oil. And so being able to do that is a big change. Well, how do you cut out the oil? Well, you do a few simple things. One is you've got to learn how to saute without oil. And it's pretty simple. Whether you're sauteing garlic, whether you're sauteing onions, whether you're sauteing kale, you get your pan just like you normally would. You put some vegetable broth in there. Maybe if you used a couple tablespoons of oil, you use a couple tablespoons, a fourth of a cup of veggie broth. You can use water if you'd like, and you can saute anything like you normally would. That's the first thing. Baking, well, how do you roast vegetables without oil? How do I, roast vegetables without butter? And so, parchment paper, I think I call it the vegan oil-free baker's best friend, because you can bake just about anything and use parchment paper to keep it from not sticking to your baking sheet. Now, some people might not like the sustainability aspect of parchment paper. You can use something like a nonstick silicone mat. Works just as well, and it can go up there pretty high in heat, so you can bake. You can roast your Brussels sprouts, you can roast your broccoli, your cauliflower, your beans, whatever you'd normally roast in there. It will work just fine. Baking, same thing. You can use silicone baking implements. You can use parchment paper in a cake dish. You can use a lot of different things there. If you don't want to, if you're cutting out the oil, you can use applesauce. You can use flax eggs. You can use date paste, prune paste, a lot of different things. So I would recommend people, if oil is a sticking point, I'd recommend just going on YouTube, look up vegan cooking without oil, and you'll find just about everything you'll need there, if those little tips didn't help. And then the other tip would be, whether it's oil or the meat, milk, and eggs, is to say, the only way you're really going to stick with this way of eating is to make it the only way that you can eat. And so if at all possible, I recommend people throw out all that meat, milk, and eggs, throw out the oil. And, a lot of people have a freezer full of meat and they think, well, it's not right to, I'm not going to eat it, but, I at least need to give it to some family or friends or, this or that. My thoughts on that, and we can all have different thoughts on it, but my thoughts on it are that the only people that I'd be giving that to are family and friends. And now that I know that those are poison foods, I wouldn't want to give my mom, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, son, daughter poison. And so I think the best place for those things to go is the landfill or the trash or the food pantry if you have one, or wherever you want to get rid of it. But I think getting it out of the house is great. And oil especially, I think if you can get the oil out of your house, then you can realize that because it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy when you start sauteing something. If you haven't really figured out how to, saute or cook without oil, to say, oh, well, I'll just use that oil this one time. But if you threw that oil out a week ago and you say, hey, I got to saute these Brussels sprouts, I don't have any oil, I better get online and look up that 2-minute YouTube video to figure it out. And you'll figure it out pretty quick. So throwing those things out is a big key, I think. And then also, once you've realized and kind of started your whole food plant-based journey, you've been on this vegan diet, now you've cut out the oil, you've cut out a lot of the processed junk, you're focusing on those whole plant foods. Well, what does a whole food plant-based diet look like? What does that look like if I'm, 10 years into it? How am I going to stick with this? Well, I think the big thing is keeping it simple and being prepared. So we always, always, always have a refrigerator safe container full of cooked brown rice, a container in the fridge full of black beans or pinto beans, a container in the fridge full of roasted potatoes. And with those dishes, and of course with some condiments, whether that be salsa or taco sauce or barbecue sauce, with those dishes, we're never more than 15 minutes away from a cooked, healthy, whole food, plant-based meal. We also like to keep a lot of frozen vegetables in our freezer, things like peas and green beans and carrots or broccoli or cauliflower. Those help out a lot because they can be cooked pretty quickly. But just an example for today, I had a pretty busy morning, so I was out and about, and then I got home and wanted to make lunch for my wife and I, and we had cooked potatoes sitting in the fridge. I have a great 15-minute French fry recipes out there, and so I sliced up those cooked potatoes, got the grill hot, threw the grill on there, had my cooked up some peas and beans, and had a meal in about 10 minutes. And that was because I was thinking ahead and keeping it pretty simple. And so having those staples always ahead of time is great. We also keep oatmeal or oats in our pantry because we never like to be more than 15 minutes away from a cooked breakfast. And that might be only 2 minutes away or 30 seconds away if you have a microwave with your oats. So being prepared and keeping it simple. And going back to the topic of there's not really any must-haves, right? We don't recommend, we followed a lot of the things that Dr. McDougall, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Kahn, Dr. Campbell have presented and really focused their lives on is the idea that, right, there's populations that have lived for tens of thousands of years basing their diet around whole plant foods, mainly starches, whether that be sweet potato, rice, potatoes, corn, quinoa. And so we do the same thing. We eat 80 to 90% of our calories from those starchy plant foods, the corn, quinoa, beans, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and then we add in some green leafy fruits and vegetables. So whether that be a salad before lunch and dinner, that can be bananas in the form of an ice cream, as I like to have quite often. And if someone who's listening to this follows me, you know that I do enjoy my nice creams. But that could also just be some fresh strawberries, blueberries, whether that be in an oatmeal or just as a snack. So I really think that people will get a lot out of it if they can, number one, keep it simple, right? If you find that you don't like sweet potatoes, but all the doctors tell me I should have sweet potatoes, who cares? If you don't like sweet potatoes, don't eat them. Go for a good russet potato. Go for a Yukon Gold. Go for a red potato. If you don't like potatoes and you like rice, we'll base your diet around rice. If you don't like rice and you love corn or you love quinoa or you love oats, well, go all in on those. Add in some fresh green and leafy vegetables, some frozen fruit or some fruit, and you're really fine. So, and there's great resources out there, right? If someone's wanting to do this, they're maybe a mom and they have a very busy schedule. They have a lot of people to feed, or they're someone who's working, or a grandparent, or anybody, a single person, and you want to keep it really simple, then there's great simple recipes out there. You go to plantbasedgabriel.com, my YouTube page, my Facebook, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of easy recipes that can be made with very, very little labor. Forksoverknives.com is another great place I send a lot of people, because the recipes there can be very simple. Of course, we all have recipes that we like that may take, a couple hours to make, but as a base of it, we never want to be more than 15 minutes away from a cooked meal. So we have that rice and those beans in our fridge because we never like to be more than 15 minutes away from a burrito bowl, or we'll have corn tortillas in the fridge. So we can have tacos, and the list goes on and on and on. And so if you can keep it simple, you can be prepared, then you can do this for decades and decades and decades. And the only thing that the only downside of it is that you're going to be able to see so many family and friends, unfortunately, see the demise of them through eating meat, milk, and eggs. And so hopefully you're around long enough to make a big enough change in the people that you really care about's lives.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate the advice, and I know all the listeners appreciate the advice too. I think it's starting to see a lot of common themes in terms of what people recommend in terms of the whole food plant-based diet. Keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate things, especially when you first transition. I mean, if you're an avid chef and you love to have really elaborate meals, then by all means go for it. But I think most people are busy and just need something simple.
You know what? I think I was like most people. You hear it over and over again. Oh, you eat a vegan diet, you must miss so much. It's so restrictive. Well, if you think about it, before I was vegan, I had the same 4 brown beige things on my plate every single meal. I had either pork, chicken, steak, fish, and then maybe some potatoes or corn or peas. That was it. Maybe change one or the other, and that was it. And I know many, many, many people that is 2 or 3 meals every single day for them. And so it can somewhat be daunting to realize that there's tens of hundreds of thousands of different plant foods that you can go out and eat. But it can also be as basic as you want, because again, you have those, you have a couple cups of rice, you have your cooked peas, a salad, and whatever your toppings want to be, salsa, sauces, and you've got a meal. And so it can be as simple, or again, if you're, like you said, that Michelin star chef that wants to start eating vegan, you can get as creative and crazy as you'd like. I'm not going to stop you. But for the average Joe, for the average Gabriel out there, there's an easy way and a simple way to go about this way of eating.
Love it. So now, if you don't mind, just tell the listeners, I know you mentioned already, like at the Plant Based Gabriel on Facebook, but how do you impact this plant-based diet community more directly? Like, do people reach out to you, and do you offer any coaching services, or how do you interact with people online?
Well, again, people can find me at plantbasedgabriel.com or on Facebook at Plant Based Gabriel, or YouTube Plant Based Gabriel, or Instagram Plant Based Gabriel, and or maybe at a Veg Fest coming near you. Or if you'd like me at a Veg Fest, go ahead and send an email to the coordinators and see if they can get me out there. But I do a lot of not necessarily much one-on-one coaching. Although if someone is out there and this resonates with them and they just have to work with me, then of course I would be willing to do that. But on a daily basis, it's mostly coming up with recipes, presenting easy to make, healthy, whole food, plant-based recipes and recipe videos, and sharing those out with the whole food and vegan community, and really trying to make as big of an impact as I can, reaching as many people, and really trying to be the, I talk about a lot, leading by example and loving others. But I really do try to be an example. I try to be the epitome of what health can maybe look like, and be as simply as possible on this way of eating, so that others can see how doable it is. Because I remember growing up, or even right before, even in college, and thinking, a vegan, just a hippie who, real skinny hippie with long hair. And, I didn't see a ton of these examples of saying, wow, you can be a farmer who works out and, looks good and but also care about the environment and eat healthfully and make a big impact on others. And so trying to be that for others is a big goal of mine. And so, of course, people can reach out. I always answer questions. I receive a lot, so it may take a day or two to respond. So anything urgent, I would maybe send a few messages if you really want to get a hold of me. But yeah, just through those avenues, just trying to help people out as much as I can, and just make a difference in the world around me. And again, we grow a lot of food here in Richmond, Virginia, and so trying to provide healthy vegan grown produce for the surrounding Richmond and areas around.
Excellent, Gabriel. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun listening to your story today, and I appreciate you being on the show.
It was a pleasure, Trent. I really enjoy your show, and I'm excited for this to be out and share it with quite a few people.
And there you have it, folks. Another great episode on the Plant Based Diet Benefits podcast. Gabriel was a lot of fun to chat with, and I hope that you guys learned a lot from him. Please do check out the show notes for our page at plantbaseddietbenefits.com/9 for this episode, and be so kind as to leave a review on iTunes or any other podcasting platform that you may be listening to this to. I greatly appreciate the feedback that you guys all provide. So thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Take care.